welcome back to another edition of the LampLighters Podcast. I'm Lauren Smith, filling in for my co-hosts Jalen Corver and Zachary Hampton. Hopefully next week they'll be back. This week we're just going to take a quick look once again at the state of the league after another week of play. Take a look at the Habs and some other teams that don't seem to be doing as well as looking at some teams who seem to be having a lot of success so far this season. So to start with, let's look at teams that are doing pretty well. Top team in the league is the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have 6 wins, 1 loss in 7 games. They are currently leading the league in points. So far they've looked pretty good. I mean, you have Austin Matthews, who, while Zach, I think, seems to believe is overrated, he has definitely proven to be an asset for the Leafs so far. Definitely made a difference in a lot of their games. They just won last night, 6-3 over the Detroit Red Wings, I believe. So far, they've had 244 shots for, 221 shots against, so they are currently outshooting their opponents. And they also sit 7th in the league when you look at their differential between their Corsi for and Corsi against, with a 38 difference in shot attempts. But that's within their 7 games played. Ahead of them, shockingly, are both the Edmonton Oilers and the Montreal Canadiens, 2 of the teams who are currently faring the worst in the NHL. Those 2 teams currently sit 29th and 30th. In 29th is the Montreal Canadiens. Pretty surprising so far, considering the fact they were supposed to have, made these trades in the offseason to really improve their offensive upside. One of 2 teams to not have regulation overtime win yet this season. Their only win of the season coming in their first game, which was against the Buffalo Sabres. So, probably not a great thing when the only team you could have beaten so far this season is the Buffalo Sabres. Other teams they've played are the Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously the top-ranked team in the league, the New York Rangers, Washington Capitals, LA Kings, San Jose Sharks, and the Chicago Blackhawks. So while those are all good teams, you would hope that in a team that you're looking at to contend for a cup, that they could beat at least one of them in their first 7 games. Still early in the season, but they have yet to finish the first or second period with a lead, which eventually I would start to get concerned about. Also, their Carey Price's save percentage numbers haven't looked great. He is currently sitting at 88.5 for the season. Again, still early, but I think especially when you look at a team that's really based around their goaltender, having a goaltender who isn't doing well is not going to work out for the Montreal Canadiens. Long term, either you need to figure out a backup who can actually take over for Carey Price when he's not doing well, or figure out a system where even if your goalie isn't doing great, your players can pick it up, because right now, in spite of the fact they are outshooting their opponents, that they have one of the best Corsi differentials in the league, they just aren't doing great. Their power play is one thing that could use work. They've only had 2 games where they've scored power play goals in. That was their 5th and 6th game. Their 5th game, they had a 50% power play, and their 6th game, they had 1 for 6, 70%. And that, they hadn't scored a single power play goal. So on the whole, hopefully that they can turn it around, but right now they're going to need to make some changes, because it's a team that should be doing a lot better than what they are. Although Ron McLean on the Steve Dangle podcast did say he wasn't even sure if they would be playoff contenders, let alone cup contenders, so you never know, maybe Ron McLean is right about them. The other team that is doing worse than what a lot of people said or expected coming into this season. I've in the past said that I thought that they would take a bit of a step back after having such a successful season last year, is the Edmonton Oilers. They're another team who won their first game and have lost their next 4. So they're currently 1 for 5 on the season. They sit 30th in the league with only 2 points. Their last night they lost to the who was it? They lost to the Carolina Hurricanes, who to be fair have looked a bit better this year. Still not great, but they haven't played that many games. Backup was in net last night, did not have a great performance, has 76 save percentage. Also, after their first game of the season, the Oilers have yet to finish the first or second period with the lead. When they have finished the first and second period with the lead, they have won both of those games. But they have trailed after the first period in every game so far this season. They currently are out shooting their opponents, though. They have 206 shots for, 148 against, which holds up. Last night they had 51 shots for, 21 shots against them. Gotta wonder what's gotta change for that team, considering the fact that really when you're out shooting the opponent by that much, you would expect to get the win. I didn't watch that game, so I don't know what their defense is looking like, although with only 21 shots against, I have to think that they were pretty decent. I think part of that may come down to goaltending. The Edmonton Oilers actually currently sit top of the league for Corsi differential, with 98 shots, with having 98 more shot attempts for them than against them. They've had 293 shot attempts. So clearly, it is not their shot attempts or attempts at offensive production that's getting to this team, but it's something else, whether it's goaltending or defense. I've always thought the Oilers were a bit weak on their defense, so maybe that's something that needs to be shored up a bit more yet. Another interesting team to take a look at is the Vegas Golden Knights. They currently sit, I believe it's 3rd in the league. Fifth in the league. To be fair, they're kind of tied with Columbus. Yeah. But either way, they currently sit 5th in the league. Their current record is 1-5, or 5-1. So, with the exception of the game that they lost to the Detroit Red Wings, the Vegas Golden Knights have won every other game this season. I believe they're off to the best start of any expansion team in NHL history. Really fun team to see play. Don't know how long their streak will last. They're one of the lower teams as far as their Corsi goes. I know some people don't love Corsi stats, but I think that they're important to take a look at. They currently sit 20th in the league. They've had 247 shot attempts for their team, 271 against. Marc-Andre Fleury has looked fantastic for them so far this season. And Malcolm Subban picking up his first win the other night. I believe against the Boston Bruins. Great to see that happen for him after getting traded away from that team. Traded? Oh, sorry, not even traded. He was claimed off of waivers by the Vegas Golden Knights. He got his first start of the season and his first win on the 15th against the Bruins, when he was in place for Marc-Andre Fleury, who was hurt. So good for him. Great to see it. Has to feel good to get that first win against the team that decided to let you go or to send you down. Drafted in 2012, obviously the younger brother of one of the great NHL players, PK Subban, who is currently playing for the Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators, who are the Western Conference champs of this past season. They are currently 15th in the league and are seeing the first wild card spot for the Western Conference. But again, 6 games in, they are currently 3-2-1. They have 3 wins, 2 losses, and 1 overtime loss. Yet to see a shootout this year. They've got 7 points. They are currently have 189 shots for, 183 against, so sitting alright. They're about even in their shot attempts for and against. So far the goaltending has looked pretty decent, I'd say. With the exception of 2 games, which were their second game where they had an 88 save percentage, and the third game where it was an 83. They've all been in the 90s, and the last 3 games have been 94 or higher, so that's good to see. Won the other night against the Colorado Avalanche, one of their divisional rivals. Well, rivals, as much as you can say that about the Colorado Avalanche. We've actually been off to a pretty great start this year. They're currently 4-3 and sit in the 3rd place for the Central Division. Again, don't expect that to last. I don't think enough has changed, but you never know. They could pull off something interesting. They currently sit 13th in the league. They have 210 shots for, 218 against, so close to even, and their Corsi differential is a -10 with 269 shot attempts for the Colorado Avalanche, 279 against. Thus far, their goaltending from Semyon Varlamov has looked pretty solid. I know the game that I watched the other night, between Colorado and Nashville, he looked decent. He finished the game with an 88 save percentage, but I can't say that was indicative of how that game seemed to go. Definitely had a few bad bounces. Fun game to watch, though. Kind of couple weird calls, with the Nashville Predators getting I believe it was Colton Sissons who got a charging call after scoring a goal. So he was called for charging against Varlamov on a review of the goal. I believe the goal was being reviewed for goal interference. So weird call. Not used to seeing a penalty get called when the goal was scored and having the goal counted. But happened the other night in the Lethbridge Hurricanes game. So I guess that's something that might start to see more of. Still strange choices. But yeah, Colorado Avalanche thus far have looked alright. Obviously still waiting to see what will happen with Matt Duchene, who's had a pretty good start to the season. Thus far he has 3 goals and 3 assists in the 7 games, so he has 6 points so far in the season. So hopefully either things improve for him in Colorado or else he's able to move on, because obviously he doesn't seem to be happy there. Looking at mine and Jalen's team so far, Jay's team continues to do the best out of all 3 of us, with the Calgary Flames sitting 11th in the league. They have a record of 4-2-1. Another team that's yet to see the shootout. All 3 of their wins have come in regulation and overtime. Yep. Their latest game was a win against the LA Kings. With their latest win coming against the Vancouver Canucks. Always great to see the Flames beat the Canucks. Good old Canadian rivalry. Had a great bounce back after their loss. They lost by 6 goals to the Sens. Came back the next night, won 5-2 against the Vancouver Canucks, which is always good to see a team bounce back like that. So it's the Calgary Flames. And then looking at my team, who are currently playing the Rangers, the New York Islanders. Not the greatest start. They're currently at a 2-3-1 with 2 wins, 3 losses, and 1 shootout loss. They have 5 points, and I believe they're sitting around 17th in the league. Let me double check that. It's a lot easier when I have Jay and Zach who can fill in the Dead silence is why I look up facts. No, sorry, they're 21st in the league. They have fallen a lot. They're currently sitting 8th in the Eastern Conference, 7th in the Metropolitan, so they're going to have to do some work to come back. Although they're really not that far behind some of the other teams. Again, 6 games in, a lot can change in that time. Columbus Blue Jackets are currently 1st in the Metropolitan. Toronto's 1st in the Atlantic. St. Louis is sitting top of the Central, and the LA Kings are sitting top of the Pacific. Continue to watch those teams, see how they progress throughout the season. Some surprising teams so far, I'd say, are the New Jersey Devils, with only 1 loss this season, doing far better than what anyone would have expected from them. Columbus Blue Jackets continue to do well. The Carolina Hurricanes have played 4 games this season, and their record is 2-1-1. Again, looking forward to seeing what that team can come up with. I think that they have the potential to do really well. Might as well just have to wait and see if they can tap into that. Another team that's done well so far is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Zach may think they're overrated. I still think that they'll be the Eastern Conference representative in the Stanley Cup Finals. Again, that's taking out my Islanders loyalty. Tampa Bay is actually currently 3rd in the league. Their record is 5-1-1 with 5 wins, 1 loss, and 1 shootout loss. They have 11 points to start the season. In 4 of their games, they finished the first period with a lead. 3 of those they won. They have 219 shots for, 244 shots against. Goaltending has been pretty good. They had a couple games below 90, but on the whole, they've been 90 or higher. Just lost, unfortunately, the other night. They had a overtime loss to the shouldn't be the New York Islanders. Sorry, it was the New Jersey Devils. I had misrecorded that. Islanders sit right below the Devils in my notebook, but they lost to the New Jersey Devils in overtime, I believe. So Tampa Bay lost in the shootout against the New Jersey Devils. That was on the second half of a back-to-back where they won 3-2 against the Detroit Red Wings. So far they've looked pretty good. I still stand by them going to the final again this year. I think that they're solid, and especially if everyone on their team can stay healthy, I think that they've got a good shot of going pretty far. The Buffalo Sabres finally picked up their first win of the season with a current record of 1-4-2. They have 1 win, 4 losses, 1 overtime loss, and 1 shootout loss. So they have 4 points. Currently sitting ahead of the Montreal Canadiens. They won their first game a couple games ago against the Anaheim Ducks. Always good when the Ducks can lose. So far, not a great start to the season. I wouldn't expect anything else from them. Hopefully they can, turn around a bit, but I don't expect them to do all that well. Let's see, any other teams? Detroit is off to a 4-3 start in their first 7 games. One of those wins was in the shootout, and they are currently sitting. Let's take a look. The Detroit Red Wings are currently sitting 14th in the league, so doing alright at this point. Hard to say if that'll last after last year being their first miss, but you never know. It could be a weird year. Never know what'll happen when you get that far, but again, early in the season. Florida Panthers not doing the best. They're currently at a 2-3 record in their first 5 games. And they haven't won a game since their 3rd game of the season. Most recent game was a 1-5 loss against the Philadelphia Flyers. So, not great. The Ottawa Senators won 2 games by with 6 goals. I believe those were against the 2 Alberta teams. Yep. They won 6-0 against the Calgary Flames and 6-1 against the Edmonton Oilers. I guess neither of the Alberta goalies were having a great night that night. They're currently at a 3-1-1 record. Sorry, 3-1-2. With 3 wins, 1 loss, 1 shootout win, and 2 shootout losses. They have 8 points, and they are currently 12th in the league, right behind the Calgary Flames. So far off to a decent start. We'll see if they can continue, build on their success from last year. Just got Erik Karlsson back, so that can only help them. The Devils off to a 5-1 start. New York Rangers are off to a 1-5, which 1-5-1, sorry, which, you know, as an Islanders fan, just makes me very happy. Goaltending numbers have been kind of up and down. Yeah, not sure. They currently have more shots for than against, but not doing great in their area. The Philadelphia Flyers are off to a 4-2-1 start. I think than most people expected. The Pittsburgh Penguins have a 4-2-1 start as well over their first 7 games. See if they can continue on their success from the past couple years. The Washington Capitals, off to kind of a meh start to the season. Their current record is 3-3-1. Gotta think that'll turn around. So far, they're getting outshot, which is not something you would expect from one of those offensive powerhouses of teams. But hopefully they'll be able to turn it around. Their most recent game was the 0-2 loss against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, not the greatest start. Of course, they had to play and lose to the Penguins, but they did come out with wins against the Habs, the Sens, and the New Jersey Devils. So I think over time that team should figure it out. Anaheim Ducks are off to a 2-3-1 start. They also have yet to lead coming out of the first period, and have only finished the second period with a lead once so far this year. Arizona Coyotes still have yet to win a game this season. 6 games in, they have an 0-5-1 record, so they do have 1 point. So, you know, 1 win away from catching Montreal and a couple other teams like the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah, gotta wonder what's gonna take for that team. They have a lot of young offensive talent. I think they just have to get their goaltending and defense sorted out. But I think on paper they look like they should be a better team than what they are. But so far, the Arizona Coyotes are continuing to look like the Arizona Coyotes. And I'm sure that'll continue. Their next chance at a win will be, let's take a look. I think it's tonight. Yep, they will have a chance to win tonight, Thursday, October 19th, against the Dallas Stars. How the Stars are playing, it's hard to say if that'll be their first win, although sometimes those good teams seem to play down to their opponent, so maybe the Coyotes will get a win. Other teams, the LA Kings are off to a 5-0-1 start, looking pretty solid. See if they'll return to being the LA Kings of the past. And then the San Jose Sharks are off to a 2-3 start. in their first 5 games of the season. Not what you want to see, but still could be worse. They lost their first 2 games, won the third, lost the fourth, and won this most recent game against the Montreal Canadiens. And then the Vancouver Canucks are currently off to a 2-2-1 start, 2 wins, 2 losses, and 1 shootout loss. They've yet to finish the first period trailing, so that's always good. Thus far, their most recent win came the other night against the Ottawa Senators in a 3-0 win. So they were the one of the only Western Canadian teams to pull out a win against the Senators on what was their Western Canada road trip. Talked about the Vegas Golden Knights. Chicago Blackhawks, they are off to a 4-2-1 start in their first 7 games. This past game is the first time they trailed coming out of the first period. And that most recent game was a 2-5 loss against the St. Louis Blues. Always sucks when you lose one of those divisional games, especially against the Blues, who always seem to be one of those teams that's in the discussion for going to the finals, and everyone always expects it to be their year. Maybe this year finally will be. Dallas Stars are off to a 3-3 start. They're pretty even to start the year. Their most recent game was a 3-1 win over the Arizona Coyotes, who they will play again tonight to see if the Coyotes can get their first win of the season. And the Minnesota Wild, they're off to a 1-1-2 start, with 1 win, 1 loss, 1 overtime loss, and 1 shootout loss. Still stand by the fact that I think that team can pull it out. They have yet to win a game where they led in following the first period, have yet to trail at the end of the first period as well. Their most recent game was a 4-5 overtime loss against the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, see, hopefully Minnesota can bring it back around. St. Louis is off to a 5-2-1 start with 5 wins, 2 losses, and 1 shootout loss. Their most recent game was that 5-2 win over Chicago. Thus far, their goaltending has looked pretty solid. Haven't finished the first period with trailing yet so far this season. Have had the lead after the first period 4 times and led after the second period 5 times. They have a perfect record when leading after the first or second period. So good for them so far. And then lastly, the Winnipeg Jets, another team that's pretty even on wins and losses to start the season with 3-3 in 6 games. Their power play looks like it could use some work. They haven't scored on their power play since their third game of the season. They scored power play goals in both the second and third games. Their power penalty kill has been iffy, being kind of up and down so far. They've had a couple of games where they've had perfect penalty kills, other games where they've been in the 50s. So overall, I think that team is still going to do well this year. When you look at their lineup, it's hard to imagine that they won't. Goaltending seems to still be a bit of an issue. Hopefully they can get that settled. See if Steve Macy can turn it around for that team, or if they're going to have to rely on Connor Hellebuck. Their most recent game was a 2-5 loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before that, they won 2-1 against the Carolina Hurricanes. Another team that should be interesting to watch this year. And that's the end of this edition of the LampLighters Podcast. Join us next week when I believe Jalen for sure should be back. We'll see what Zach is up to. And with that, we hope you have a great week. Enjoy some more NHL hockey, and don't forget to light that lamp.